one of the topics that I have seen on social media and Facebook groups is whether a LAANC authorization is enough for you to fly. In this video, I go into detail on whether a LAANC authorization is enough for you to fly. Hello and welcome to LegalDrone, where we talk about drones and other tech stuff. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Before we begin, as always, this is not legal advice. So as part of the integration of drones to the airspace, the FAA launched what is known as Low Altitude Authorization Notification Capability for airports. So now you can, ask for permission to fly near an airport, and you will get a authorization. And this process is an automated process, so the notification is automatic. So if your requests fall within the requirements for that particular space that you are requesting an authorization, you will get a automatic authorization. And I have done this a few times, and it's truly quick and efficient way to let know control towers that you are flying close to the airport. So before we had LAANCs, pilots had to call the air control towers to request authorization to fly near airports. So now that process is an automated process, and you don't have to bother air traffic controls for those particular matters. Now, there's a misconception that having an LAANC authorization is basically a green light to fly anywhere, and that is basically because you will always hear this from everybody. The FAA is the only one that can regulate the airspace. And that is technically true if we are speaking only in terms of administrative agencies, because Congress also has the power to regulate airspace. Congress is the greatest regulator in our country. Congress is the one that created the FAA, and they do have the power to control the airspace or to regulate it. And if you have been following my videos, you know what is going to be my comment. There is also other instances on drone flight that does not fall entirely under the jurisdiction of the FAA. And one of those things is landing and taking off, and where you stand operating the drone. And basically that states can regulate land use. And since the approval of the Constitution, the United States have been founded on this idea of federalism. And because of federalism, states can regulate things that happen within their states. And yes, the airspace, Congress has claimed the airspace as something that has to do with interstate commerce. But what you do on city land, county land, state lands, that still falls within the jurisdiction of the states, cities, and counties. I've been having one question, and that is, how come that the FAA can regulate emergency landings? And well, and that's something that falls under the necessary powers that Congress has, and that is why Congress can tell the FAA, well, you can regulate those things, and those are safety issues that comes with flying. And the and Congress need to have those necessary powers to regulate emergency landings, because they are regulating the airspace. And because of that, they transfer those powers to the FAA. So therefore the FAA can regulate, for example, emergency landing. But the other things that happen on the ground, those still under the power of states and a few agencies, such as the national park. But one law in particular that Congress said I'm going to step in here and I'm going to regulate the airspace is national wildlife refuges. And I'm going to give you a few examples where you can actually get a LAANC authorization in an airspace that has been regulated by Congress. And this is a little bit problematic sometimes because the FAA system is not integrated with these other type of airspace from laws and other agencies. So I'm going to give you first an example of the Hilton Head Airport at, I believe this is South Carolina. So if you look at that particular map, you will see that you will have the Pinckney Island National Wildlife Refuge that is going to be overlapping the LAANC authorization area of the Hilton Head Airport. So if you take a closer look, you will see that you can actually request and get a LAANC authorization for up to 400 feet at some places, 200 feet and others, over that wildlife refuge. And even though if you get even if you get the authorization by law, you cannot fly over those places. So this is one of those cases that getting a LAANC authorization is not enough to fly. Example that I really like to give is if you go to the John F. Kennedy International Airport. So in New York, you will see that there are a lot of restrictions for flying because it is one of the busiest cities in the United States, because you have actually three very close airports. You have the John F. Kennedy International Airport, you have the LaGuardia Airport, and you have the Newark Liberty International Airport. So these three airports are very close to New York City, but specifically the John F. Kennedy International Airport, if you take a closer look, you'll see that you have the Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge. And this is basically, if you have gone to JFK, you'll see that there is the Jamaica Bay right beside the John F. Kennedy Airport. And if you see that there are a few places here that you can actually get a LAANC authorization over the wildlife refuge. And as you've seen, by law you cannot fly. So this is another instance where you can get an actual LAANC authorization to fly in a place that you cannot fly because of other laws. And finally, because I really like the topic, if you go to Manhattan, you will see that over Manhattan you can request LAANC authorizations throughout whole Manhattan. And there are places that you can fly, other places that you might not be able to fly, but you can request and get LAANC authorization. There's a city ordinance in New York that does not allow you to take off, land, or operate a drone within city limits or on places that are not authorized to do so. So whether you get a LAANC authorization or not, you still have to follow that particular city ordinance. So a workaround that a lot of people have found is taking off from the Hudson. So in that particular instance, you could get the launch authorization and take off from the Hudson and fly over New York. Now, New York is one of the busiest cities in the United States, and there are a lot of people walking. So you have to remember that you still need to follow the flying over people rule and the fly within the visual line of sight. So as you have seen, there are a few instances where you can actually get a launch authorization to fly, and there is a law that prohibits you from flying. There are other instances where there are city ordinance that prohibits you from taking off, landing, or operating the drones. So as for the question of Is a LAANC authorization enough to fly? Well, that is going to depend on where you are flying. So I'm giving you a few examples when the answer to that question is no. But there are a lot of times that the answer to that question is yes. And you have to keep in mind that when flying your drone in one of these places. So that's all for this video. Thanks again for watching. If you really like the video, hit like button, share, subscribe to the channel. If you want to see more drone law videos, you can click in the box over here. So thanks again for watching and see you next time.